Okay, so first and foremost, good evening everyone, and thank you so much for joining. I'm Hitanshu Verma, your Flutter facilitator for this year, and today I'm having Umang Bhalla from UC Club. Umang, are you there?
Hello. Connect.
So Umang will be going through the GitHub part of Flutter. Umang, over to you.
All right. Let me brief you all about what we'll be going to cover in this first session. First, we will learn how to set up our development environment. This will include installing Git, setting up GitHub account, adding SSH authentication for easier Git push, and learning some basic GitHub, Git commands. Um, then we'll be covering some basic Flutter CLI commands, and these CLI commands will come really handy when we will be, exploring CI/CD with GitHub Actions. All right, so let's get started. So first, for installing Git, we just Google it, install Git on Windows. So you need to remember that you should only visit Git SCM for downloading this package. There should be an exe file. After you have downloaded this exe file, you just need to double click it and press next multiple times and just simple installation. And then in your start menu, you should just find a application called Git Bash. Next, on installing on Linux, uh, let's open Arch and Ubuntu here. So on Arch, you just need to write sudo pacman -s git to install Git, and on Ubuntu, you need to write apt install Git. And if you see carefully, we shown that it's reinstalling, so it's probably already installed on your Linux system. Next, let's just start with making a GitHub account. So this is the GitHub website, and in the top right corner, you see a sign up icon. It's a very simple process to create your GitHub account. First, you need to enter your email, then your password, and then your preferred username. Next, by the end of this process, you are already signed in. If you are not, and if you already have account, then just press the sign in icon and then sign in. And next, we are going to create a new repository. So on the left side, you need to click new repository. Then for this demo, I'm just calling it demo, and there are some options here. So for initialization of this repository, you can actually create the repository empty if you really want, and we are going to use that option in the end part of this event. For this demo, I'm going to choose add the readme file, and adding this readme file will just create a first commit, and it's not going to be an empty repository. Right. So next, we need to clone this repository in our system. So we'll click on the code icon, then in the sh header, we'll just copy it. And also just notice this warning. This we are going to cover this in a bit. All right, so maybe it's readable now. To code, to clone this repository, we'll write git clone and then paste this SSH address. And obviously this is going to only happen first time. It will authenticate you if you're a real user or something. So you have to write yes, and it is going to fail for the first time. You need to remember that it is going to fail, right? Yeah, as expected, it failed. The reason for that is we are not getting any kind of permissions for our system. It is our account, but the the GitHub server do not understand that it is our account. So let's just click on this warning here. So in this warning, it says we need to add a SSH keys, but actually we don't have any SSH keys. So we'll click on this heading. This heading will point us to this website, and we need to click the generate the SSH keys. So okay, so this part is pretty simple, and it should be same for Windows, Linux, or Mac. And you can see here you just need to open a terminal, and in Windows, just now I just told you that you need to open Git Bash. So on Mac, on Linux, you just need to open any kind of terminal you have, and on Windows you need to open the Git Bash application is just installed. So according to the steps, we are just going to follow the commands. I'm going to copy paste that command, and then I'm going to add my email address which I use to create the account. So in your case, you might use any kind of Gmail ID, or you may have used let's say the college account if you really wanted to. So I'm going to enter my own email ID which I use to create this account. And here you can see it's going to ask what should be the the location for this what you say, the key values, or the private and the public keys for which we are going to generate. So I'm going to press enter, so that it just takes the default keys or the default path for it, because in the next steps we are going to use that default path. So I'm going to press enter again, because I'm not really interested in making any kind of passphrase. But if you are going to make any passphrase, the next time you have to look in the next line, you just have to enter the passphrase again. And also remember, when you are typing this passphrase, it's not visible, but it's actually there. So don't get confused with that. Right. So we have our sh keys generated here. Next command, actually most of these commands are kind of copy paste. You don't need to really know what's going on here, because it's kind of beyond the scope of let's just call it basics. It's more than advanced level things. So let's copy next command as well. And also, yeah, you can skip this part because we are not really using any kind of hardware keys. So now we need to add that key to our GitHub account. So for that, we just need to print that public key. So remember that only the public key needs to be exposed. You don't need to expose your private keys. Private key will not have this kind of extension. It will be just ID ED25519 something. And this is my public key, and it's really safe to just expose it. It's not really a big deal. So let's go back here and click new SSH keys, and we can call it Archbox, or maybe like call it new laptop or something, but anything. And add the keys. Okay. So next thing will be testing if our the keys that we just added is correct or not, or something went wrong or something like. Okay. So we have just added the key, and now let's see if we can Git clone it again. And we're in. Okay. So we can Git clone it now, and obviously we can use other commands as well. So let's just type the git command, press enter to see what all the commands are available for us. Okay, so it's going to scroll away because I'm on a big font size. So I'm going to pipe this output. So remember this icon. This is the pipe icon. So I'm going to pipe this the output of this git command into a pager. So less is a pager. You can wiki search Google anything. What is a Unix pager? And when I pipe this output, it doesn't scroll away the printed output of the git command. So I can use the up down arrow keys to confirm, like, to scroll down and up. All right, so here we can see multiple commands that we'll be using. So git init is going to be used to initialize or reinitialize any kind of repository inside a folder. Then git add is going to stage any kind of folder files or something you need to attach to your repository, which git needs to track. Then git commit is going to commit that file that was staged, and then we'll be covering also the git log command, which is not okay, which is there. Okay. Right, so let's start with editing the file. So here I have a readme file, and let's cat that out. Okay, so it has demo written into it. And here I used vim command, but you can actually use any kind of code editor you want. You can write code and then press enter and then whatever. So I'm going to use vim, and I'm going to write hello world something. And then we are going to do git status. So git status will show us what is the current stage of this repository. Like if you have any kind of untracked files or staged files, or semi-tracked file, because there can be parts of a file that are staged and parts of a file which are not yet staged. Right. So Next, we are going to git add it so that we can commit it later. So now git status says that it is modified, it is staged because it's clean. So now let's just do git commit, and the first time git commit will fail because you have not really added any kind of user information. So I'm just going to press enter and it's going to show me some information about me that which is not yet added. So it's pretty simple to fix. Just copy this line and paste it and then enter that email ID again which you used to create the GitHub account, and similarly for your name. All right, so git commit -m means message in the sense like we are just adding one line instead of any kind of heading and a paragraph. So let's call it second commit, right? Mm, and now we will see git lock command. So git lock command is going to print the history of our commits including the hashes and the author of those commits. So first commit was also made by me and the second was also made by me. Just in this case this was made on GitHub server, so it just took my username and here I provided my complete name. Also here if you can see the head is pointing to main in my local repository, and the repository which is on GitHub server is still on the first commits because it says a origin/mean. And what exactly is origin? Let's just print git remote -v. So git remote -v is going to print the origin of the backup repository which we have and which we have hosted on GitHub. So in our case we're calling it origin, but you can basically add any kind of other remote by remote add and then call it upstream and something like that, and then the path of that uh, other repository if you want to. So next we can confirm it that we are still on the first commit in the GitHub website or the GitHub repository, and we are on the second commit on the local repository. And to push the second commit to our repository on the GitHub website, we will do git push origin and main is the name of our branch and origin is the the ID of our or the address of our what do you say, the upstream or the backup repository or whatever the GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket, any kind of repository service website is providing us. Okay, so we're going to reload and confirm. Yeah. And now let's try the git pull command, and git pull command is going to pulling the changes from other repository or that repository if it wasn't done by you or if it was done on another system or any other server some way. So I'm going to edit this file and I'm editing this hello world to hi world, right? And I'm going to save this and call it updated over GitHub, right? I'm going to commit that, and there are 3 commits in our log on GitHub server. To pull those changes, we'll write git pull, and we can obviously write origin main, but there is only one origin and there's only one branch, so it will pick the default one. And we can cat that file to confirm. So that's done. Let's just move out of this repository, right? That's ls-ls just to confirm. This is our repository and I'm going to delete it. So this is like a scenario in which you just lost your system or maybe deleted it by mistake. And because we made a repository on GitHub, we can always just clone it again. So git clone and then cd into that repository and then print it out, and obviously we will have the files. Next, we'll be covering some Flutter CLI commands, and these are going to be really basic commands. And for that, I'm going to exit out of this and make a new Flutter project. So hopefully you all have a Flutter setup, but if you don't, you can just contact us and we'll share you some blogs, or maybe by the end of this event or the Flutter festival, we'll share you some blogs and some methods to install Flutter correctly on your OS, Windows or Linux or MacOS, any kind of system. So if you have set up Flutter, you can follow along. just you need to write flutter create and then the name of the project, or the, we'll get an error right now if we put a dash here. So dash is not allowed in any kind of dark package. We need to put underscore here, and let's do that. Okay, so we have the counter demo created. Okay, now let's do git status inside this, and it's obviously going to fail because we haven't really created a wait a sec. Okay, maybe it was my old repository. Okay, now yeah, okay, now we are creating a new one. It was probably a last time I tried. All right, so git status again, and yeah, we do not have a repository here yet. So in the beginning, I told about option we have in which we do not choose anything here. So we'll call it counter demo again, the same name, or you can put any other name. All right, and description is obviously optional. So I'm not going to choose any kind of files here, any kind of .ignore file, or readme file, or any kind of license, so that I get a empty repository. Now we are already provided with many helpful commands which we are going to use. So first we are going to use the git init command. This is actually the command which is used to create the GitHub repository, or GitHub, I mean the Git repository. So all right, we have created the Git repository, and by doing git status, okay, so git status shows that all the files in this repository are not tracked. Obviously, we just created the repository, and we can also use the -s flag to see the simpler version of this. So the question mark means it's not yet tracked. And if I'm going to, git add the files, like I can add the files one by one, or I can just do git add dot. So git add dot means we are going to add all the repositories in the staging area. Now if I do git status -s, so we have shown capital A's, which means we have staged all these files. All right, let's just reload to confirm that we haven't really pushed it. Okay, next command will be committing these changes. So we'll call it the first commit, and git status -s. Yeah. So git status doesn't show anything because we have already committed all the changes. So git log, we are on the first commit, and this commit is still on a local repository because we do not have any kind of origin mentioned beside it. uh, next we'll name this branch. It's already named main, but we can just name it for the sake of this example, because sometimes you can create a repository which has default branch name as master. So just we're going to rename it to main. Next we are going to copy this command, and all right, so let me explain this command. So we are going to use a sub command called remote, and inside that remote we are going to add an origin. So origin is the name of this path which we are going to attach to this repository. And now when we do enter and then do git remote -v, we are shown that similar way which we just in the last demo we saw. We have an origin, and both of those origin are used the same, and we are going to push and fetch both from that same address. All right, so next let's git push, and actually you should provide your origin and branch most of the time. If you only have one branch and one origin, it's not really a problem, but you should provide it when you push it. um, So we have pushed it, and I'm going to reload and confirm, and almost all the files are pushed. And I'm saying almost because not really all the files are pushed. So let me just do this. Yeah. So the .idea folder, .git folder obviously, and the .dart tools folder, or a .dart tool folder is not yet pushed. And the reason for that is there is a Git Ignore file already present in this this project. So let me open that Git Ignore file. So you're seeing multiple stars in front of these file types, you can say. And these stars just mean that it can be any file name, but the file extension should be .iws or .ipr or .iml, something like that. So here we have .idea folder mentioned directly that this folder will not be tracked. And here also we have a .dart tool folder, which is not getting tracked, and a build folder, which is not getting tracked. So there are multiple reasons why you would not like your these folder to be tracked, because builds are like one-time things which you are is going to test, or maybe you are going to release it, but it's definitely going to be like multiple versions of that, and you don't really need to track that build because it's the final product. You only need to track the source code for that. And the .dart tools is like a caching folder, so I can actually remove the .dart folder right now. Let's do rmrf dart tools. So I just removed that folder, all right. And to get that folder back, I'm going to use another Flutter command, which is Flutter pub get. So Flutter pub get will just bring all your dependencies down to your local repository and cache it in your file system. And here we have the .dart folder again. So okay. Next, I'm going to use the Flutter analyze command, and because it's a fresh repository, it's a template repository for a counter app, it's obviously not going to have any kind of issues or any kind of null safety. But analyze command is just going to print any kind of errors which are which can be detected before the build occurs, all right. So that we just don't waste our time while the build happens and it fails. Next, I'm going to use the flutter test command. And what exactly is this flutter test command? It's going to take about 10 seconds. This test folder we have in our project has a dart file. This dart file has some functions, and there's in the main function we are using some kind of comparison that the output of this should match the output of this, and if that doesn't match, then we are failing the test. All right, so let me change something so that we fail our test. And for that I'm going to change the value in this to 0. Right, and it was 1, and I'm going to change it to 0. Now if I'm going to do flutter test, it's going to fail. Okay. um if you are like familiar with what flutter is, flutter is basically a great tool for making cross platform apps. So the thing about it is that you can use the same code base to create Linux apps, Android apps, macOS apps, iOS apps, Windows apps, and even web apps at this point in the new features. So, but there's also a catch for that. So I can definitely build a Linux app right now. So I would do Flutter build and then Linux. So this will start building the Linux app, and I'm not going to build it right now. Also, I can just build a app bundle or APK or something like that. But there's a limitation with it, that I cannot really create all kinds of the cross-platform options which you are getting with Flutter. That like on Linux, I can only create Linux binaries, web apps, and APKs or app bundles. But Flutter supports iOS and macOS as well. So how does that happen? So if you're on macOS, then only you can create macOS apps, web apps, and iOS apps. And if you're on Windows, then only you can create the Windows version of that same code base. So let me try that again in front of you. So I'm going to write Flutter build Windows. Okay, yeah. So it's going to fail because I'm not really on a Windows system. I'm on Linux system, and the same for iOS thing. It's already it would just say it's not really a command because it obviously knows that. Um, Next, we are going to cover some. All right, Flutter format. So Flutter format is like it's like if you have some kind of extension within VS Code sometimes, and you save a file and it's already getting formatted. So it's like the same thing, but for Dart files and in commanding things. So if I'm going to do Flutter format dot means again the current folder. I can actually give the path for that if I really wanted to. So I can specify the path of the dot file to format it or something like that. But because this is the like a new repository and it's a template repository, there are no changes. And let's do git status to confirm if there. Okay, yeah, because there's only one change for that test which we changed, which caused it to fail. So let's commit that. Added failing tests. All right. So I've just added the test, and I'm just again going to change the same file and change some formatting within it, like moving it around and bringing it in the same line and something like that. Not really changing with the code, but just moving around things. So this is still the same code, still the same functionality. It's still going to build the same thing. But if you do git status, it's going to say it's changed because visually it did change. But you don't really want these things to happen because it will create useless amounts of commits and diffs in between that. So that this is why I used a format command. So I'm going to format it again, and hopefully it doesn't create any kind of yeah. If I go to check the git status, it's going to still show modified, but the formatting of this file is almost the same. Like I'm probably missing some spaces and things like that. Right. Yep. Anyways, so Flutter format just manages to bring the formatting back if you failed it somewhere. And now let's just cover some CI/CD commands with GitHub Actions, because that's kind of the highlight of this event. What exactly is a GitHub Action? So GitHub Actions, enable you to create custom software development life cycles. Like it's kind of a virtual machine, and in that virtual machine, you're providing some kind of configuration. And virtual machines, in the sense, you can provide. GitHub provides a Linux virtual machine of Ubuntu and Linux Mint, and we're also getting Windows virtual machines for Windows 7 or 10, I guess, and multiple versions for macOS as well. And in this example, I'm going to cover for a macOS virtual machine and a Linux virtual machine. So what we are doing in GitHub Actions is that we are creating some workflows, and the workflows configurations are made in YML files. So YML files are also Markdown files, like README or the README. I mean Markdown or HTML or some kind of that XML file. But instead of those tags or some other kind of syntax, it's using tabs. So this is one tab, this is two tabs, and this is three tabs. So something like Python does. So here you can see this jobs is like a superset, or the parents for this three test, or these three stages for this configuration. And first of this stage is called flutter test. Second one I'm calling is build iOS, and the third one I'm calling is build app bundle. And if you look closely, because I'm going to explain it later again, there is a needs key value pair here, which is having a flutter test name. So this job, we have three jobs, as you can see. uh, this first job needs to be completed, then only this second and third job will be started. So let's do that demo for that. I'm going to edit this file and add the file through GitHub UI. You can use it, obviously you do it over the terminal or somewhere in your creator. So but just remember the file structure for that. So inside your project repository, you need to have a folder called GitHub, and inside that GitHub folder, you need to have a workflows folder. So inside that, I'm going to you can actually name it anything, but it should be a YML file. So let's call it build.yml, and paste this. So the main thing with this is the triggers. So you can make it behave on triggers, or you can create it in some way that it just triggers automatically at some certain amount of time. So I'm going to set the trigger for main branch just for now, because we don't really have any kind of dev branch. And the trigger would be push, and only for the main branch. Let's add it. Now, if you can see here, there's a yellow dot, but it's because of my extension. But so you need to click on the actions icon, and then click on this create build YML. So why this got trigger was I just created this file and then pushed it, and because of pushing it, it was triggered. So that's basically how it was configured to be. So there are multiple parts to this. In this first step, that was dependency for the other two. First, we are setting up our environment. So this actions checkout is used to set up our virtual environment for that, and it's basically a VM for of Ubuntu. And then we are setting up Java, and Java version 12 I guess was configured. And then there's a Flutter action for there's a GitHub action for Flutter. So what this GitHub action is doing is it's going to pull all the Flutter dependency and the Flutter installation methods, and it's just going to install it over on this virtual machine. So it's also printing us that it's installing. Next, it's going to run the Flutter analyze command, then the Flutter test command, and it's probably going to fail because if you remember correctly, we did add it, and okay, we haven't really pushed it. Okay, we should have pushed it. So now it's not going to fail because we haven't really pushed the changes for that. So I'm going to pull the changes which was made. Okay, so we have made a mistake because I haven't really pulled and pushed it. So bear with me. Git pull dash f. Okay, git stash. So obviously we are getting some error, and you can always Google it. So in this case, I'm going to just stash my changes. Stash means I'm not committing them, and I can pop them later. So it's going to fall back to the last commit, and now I can git pull it easily. So now I've git pulled it, and if I do ls, and in the right, we have the git log matching the repository in this. So we have two commits here and we have two commits locally. Now, and let's add another, the workflow which I just mentioned, and that workflow will get triggered over a pull request. So I'm also going to make a repository, another branch just to show that pull request. So let's create that another file over again in this same UI. .github slash workflows slash let's call it pullrec.yml. Yep. And it's going to be triggered for main and the dev branch, and I'm going to just create a dev branch to create some changes in our repository. So it's just going to test it, and same action is being used to run the Flutter commands. Let's pull the changes down in the repository locally. Okay. Origin main, definitely. Okay. Now let's make a new branch. So git checkout dash b, and then I'm going to name our branch dev. So in this dev branch, I'm going to again fail the test because we haven't really failed the test. It's still, or maybe it's still failing. Okay, yeah, it's still failing the test. To just confirm it, Flutter test. And yes, okay, so it's still failing the test, and I'm going to push this test, push this stage of this repository to the dev branch in our GitHub's repository. So let's git add dot and git commit added failing test again because we haven't really pushed the old commit. So now we git push origin, and if you remember, we are on the dev branch, so we'll write git push origin dev, and we have pushed it. So let's okay, we don't really need to reload it. Now we have option to compare and pull request. So pull request means we have two branches, and there's some changes in one branch, and it like those changes are kind of mergeable, if you say. So we are going to click on compare and pull request. Next, again you can choose these options, but defaults are correct. Next, we are going to create the pull request, and because if you remember, like the last time, I just added a new GitHub action. So GitHub action, again, it's just a set of instructions which is going to be running in a virtual machine, and you can create some triggers which are going to cause those changes or cause those events. So the trigger which I set was the pull request on main branch. It can also be on dev branch, and when the trigger is executed, it's going to set up Java and Flutter, and then going to run Flutter pub get just to cache the dependency, then analyze it, and then do the test. And it should fail because we have pushed some tests which are going to fail. So let's wait for that. And meanwhile, you can actually just go to this repository, subcito.com/. This is the creator of this GitHub action, and you can find multiple GitHub action based on your needs on the marketplace. So this GitHub action listed on GitHub marketplace, and in the actions category, you can just search for Flutter, and then you can get multiple actions made by the community users or even GitHub sometimes. So GitHub does make actions for basic things like first interaction, checkout, or labeler, or some kind of tagging system, or just to set up Java, like things like that. And the Flutter test failed, like as expected. So because it failed, we already before reading the changes inside this pull request, we already know it's going to fail, and it's not really good to merge these. So we can close this pull request. So in this way, you can simplify your development system. Like if you are working with a team and you already have this kind of action set up, it's going to streamline and really simplify your development. Next. Okay, so it's basically done. Like I'm actually going to explain these workflows now. So why I'm going to why we had this was was the same thing like in the pull request case. We are testing it before building it. We are testing it so that while we start the build command, like this command and the clean command, or actually let's check what the clean command does. Flutter clean dash dash help. So the clean command is going to delete the contents inside the build folder and the .dart folder that the caching was done. And inside the build folder, we definitely have some caches. All right. Now let's do Flutter clean and ls. Yeah. So it just removed all the older builds or the older caches for those builds. That's why we're using Flutter clean here. And then because this is a macOS virtual machine, we can run the build iOS command. And here it's the what to say Ubuntu virtual machine, so we can do the app bundle. And in the end, if you see, we are using an upload artifact action, and also you can find this in the marketplace. So what this does is it just pulls out that build file, because we are just building it and we are not really pulling it out in case of iOS at least. But in case of Android, I'm just pulling it out just for the sake of this demo. So in the actions category, if you go and check this build YML, which passed, and it created the iOS PPA file and the Android file. And here we have the release.bundle file. So if I change that app bundle to APK, like here, so maybe this. So if I change this, build app bundle to build APK, we would have an APK file which you can directly download and share to others. And whenever you push, this file will get built if the the code passes the test which you have created, or which the default analysis test passes. So that's basically it for this the event. It was kind of small, but there are multiple things which you can just Google and build upon. So you should Google by the end of this event about GitHub Actions and how to set up Flutter. And you should also check blogs about setting this up. And this repository with the the YML file which I used to create are public, so you can go to umgbhalla/flutter demo on github.com to find these two files. And that's basically it.
Thank you, Umang, for conducting such an amazing session that was information packed. So now you can just Google all the terms that Umang said. Now you can just Google all the terms that Umang said and then try it yourself. If you have any doubt, we are all available on Discord. You can easily ask. Thank you for joining in.